Well, good afternoon all, and welcome to the Vale of Glamorgan Cabinet meeting taking place today. It's 29th of September 2022. I'm Councillor Liz Burnett and I'm chair of the meeting as the leader of the Vale of Glamorgan Council and Cabinet member for Performance and Resources. May I remind everyone present that the meeting is being live streamed as well as recorded via the internet, and this recording will be archived for future viewing. Could all participants please mute themselves when not speaking in order to avoid any background noise or feedback when other participants are speaking? If a participant wishes to speak, can they please put their hand up if visible on screen, which I think we all are, or use the raise hand function. Please ensure that all debate is raised verbally and not via the chat function for the sake of the recording. The chat function may, however, be used to highlight any technical issues and or to grab the attention of the chair or Democratic Services Officer. If anyone has difficulty hearing or being heard when they are addressing the Cabinet, then they should let the chair or Democratic Officer know. If they have webcam, then they should try turning this off, as this can help with broadband or Wi-Fi bandwidth, so they at least can hear and be heard. Is everyone okay with that? And without further ado, I shall move on. Agenda item 1 is apologies for absence. I have apologies from Councillor Margaret Wilkinson, who's unable to join us today, but looking at the screen, I see that we have everybody else here. I know that Eddie, you're at the other end of Wales, so we hope that your connection holds up for your reports. Agenda item 2 is the minutes of the last meeting. Can I take those as a true reflection of the meeting?
Yes, and I'll second that, Leader.
Super, thank you. And everybody's happy with that. And then agenda item 3 is to receive declarations of interest. I believe we have some today. Rhiannon, I think you're still muted.
I would like to declare an interest in the Uncollege item on the purchase of land at Cosmiston. I have an application for a dispensation in, but that has not yet been granted.
Liz, you've gone quiet.
Muted, Liz.
I was muted then. I was trying to behave. That's agenda items 10 and 15, I believe, that will apply to. So super, thanks. And Mark, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, equally the same application for dispensation is in the pipeline, but not yet determined. Against the same items, agendas 10 and 15. Thank you.
Thank you. And so you'll withdraw from the meeting?
We'll withdraw from the meeting, yes.
Super, while they're being heard. I think what we could do, unless there's a reason why not, is if we take agenda item 10 to the end of the part 1 agenda, then Mark and Rhiannon can leave it at that point, and we can go from there straight through to agenda item to the part 2 report. Would that be in order, Matt?
That's no problem at all, Leader.
Yes, super, that's great. So moving on to, we've got a reference from Healthy Living and Social Care Scrutiny Committee from the 6th of September. Wyn, this was your report originally.
That's correct.
Have you got any comments?
Yeah, the operational manager for Neighbourhood Services, Healthy Living and Performance, with his officer, presented the report, which highlighted many of the successful initiatives undertaken during the year, including assistance to clubs, the Summer of Fun, the Gold Pass scheme, Winter of Wellbeing, and the provision of play schemes. The report was accepted by the committee, who were absolutely delighted with the contents of the report. And in the meeting, they suggested that this report was sent over to Cabinet for their noting and actually looking at the report. So I'm recommending this afternoon that the information contained within the Sport and Play annual update report be noted, and obviously that the Sport and Play annual update report is referred to us for consideration. And obviously it's a very good report, and this report was for 21-22, not the current 22-23 summer fund. This is the previous year, which was very successful, but I'm waiting now for this year's to come because this was even better. So thank you very much, Leader, but that's a recommendation I propose.
Super. So you're recommending that we note the Sport and Play annual update.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I think that if we could should we add an extra recommendation that we thank the Sport and Play team for their phenomenal work, which has led to such a comprehensive report. So are you happy that to move that as well? Great.
Yes, certainly. Thank you, Leader, for adding that one. Thank you.
I'm very happy to second that one.
Thank you.
Thanks. So moving on, agenda item 5, and that's a report from me, and that's an update on strategic collaborative working initiatives, which is a regular update that we bring to Cabinet. Well, it's 6 monthly now. They used to be quarterly, but they are pretty comprehensive. It's an interesting one because in some ways collaborative working has become just our usual way of working, hasn't it? I mean, we sometimes work with one other council, other times we work with 2 or 3. In the case of the capital region, we work with 9 other councils, and this has actually become something that we're more and more used to. In fact, most of this week my meetings have been outside this council, working with other leaders, other councillors, etc. The report is quite substantial. Appendix A goes through all the various different reports, what we're working on, who we're in collaboration with, and I think that we'll be doing a lot more of this as we go forward, particularly with the pressures on finances that we're likely to see. It's quite interesting in terms of the updates. If you have a look at paragraph 2.2, that some of these partnerships actually sort of morph into other things. And when you think of going back to the coronavirus pandemic, where the shared regulatory services, which in itself is a collaborative agreement, were involved in delivering the Test, Trace, Protect scheme. And again, in Wales, that worked very, very well. It also formed the incident management team. That has been stood down now, and there is actually now an amplifying prevention delivery board, which looks at some of the priority health areas and is looking into that. So it's the way that we can change the way that we're working sort of going forward in terms of good practice, and developing it into other areas to deliver for the council. So as I said, this is for, as I said, a regular report for our information. So in terms of recommendations, the first recommendation is that Cabinet considers the strategic collaborative working initiatives that are in place to support the delivery and development of council services and the council's well-being outcomes and objectives. And secondly, that this report be circulated by email to all Vale of Glamorgan Council elected members and also members of the Public Services Board for their information. I'd so move. Is there anyone that will second?
I'll second that, Leader.
Thanks, Bronwyn. And are we all in agreement? Super. Thank you. Agenda item 6, partially sort of sorting out some policy arrangements in terms of the council's discretionary or council tax discretionary relief. And under the Local Government Finance Act 1992, the council's got provision or has got discretion to reduce council tax liability in relation to individual cases or classes of cases. And the procedure adopted by the council for determining applications received in relation to discretionary reductions under section 13A 1C was approved by Cabinet back on the 15th of April 2019, and it was reaffirmed by us on the 9th of June this year. So the council tax reduction scheme is a national scheme whereby households on a limited income can receive support to reduce their council tax liability. But Welsh Government are unable to amend the scheme in year, and therefore no changes can be made to the existing scheme until 2023-24. That caused a bit of a problem because Ukrainian nationals are currently prevented from claiming support under the National Council Tax Reduction Scheme, and therefore Welsh Government have asked councils to consider using their discretionary powers under the Local Government Finance Act in 1992 to reduce council tax to the extent where it would have been had Ukrainian nationals been able to claim support under the existing council tax reduction scheme. The intention is for the Welsh Government to change the council tax reduction scheme regulations for the 2023-24 financial year to allow Ukrainian nationals to claim support under the scheme, and therefore support under the council's discretionary scheme would cease on the 31st of March 2023. So it's therefore that we would propose that Ukrainian nationals are designated as a class of case entitled to support under the council's discretionary scheme, whereby their council tax would be reduced to the same level had they been able to claim under the National Council Tax Reduction Scheme. It sounds complicated, but it's actually quite simple. It's just we're making provision for an adjustment where it's not a straightforward situation. Applications are considered within the Exchequer team, within the council's finance team, by senior officers, and an appeal process is in place should a decision be challenged. As happens with the discretionary council tax reduction scheme, the cost of awarding payments must be funded from within the total income generated by council tax. And if you remember, when we were setting the scheme on the 9th of June, we went through that. So as a consequence, the council will only consider using its powers to reduce council tax liability for any council taxpayer or class of payer in exceptional circumstances. So in effect, when all other avenues have been explored. Since the introduction of the policy in 2019, the overall total costs of awarding discounts under the policies remained within the anticipated maximum expenditure of £15,000 per annum. However, what I would say is, as the number of applications that will be received from UK nationals is unknown, then it is likely that this figure could be exceeded during the current financial year only, up until the situation changes in March 2023. So in terms of actually achieving that change, the recommendations that are before us today for that are, firstly, that Cabinet designates Ukrainian nationals as a class of case entitled to support from the 1st of April 2022 to 31st of March 2023 under Section 3C of the Council's discretionary council tax reduction policy. 2, that discretionary council tax reduction will only be awarded to Ukrainian nationals after all of the discounts and exemptions that are applicable have been awarded. 3, that the award will commence from the date the application is received, and any backdated period will be considered depending on the merits of each individual application. And finally, that the award amount of the award will not exceed the amount that would have been awarded under the council tax reduction scheme had the class described as Ukrainian nationals been able to claim council tax reduction or council tax reduction scheme support in accordance with current statute. So if that's clear enough and for everyone, I would so move.
Yeah, and I'll second that, Leader. All those.
Thank you. And then on to agenda item 7, which is basically a report on the progress to implement the upgraded core line of business system, which is Oracle Fusion, and that supports the council's essential financial payroll and HR processes, so an essential part of our sort of backroom functions. The implementation of Oracle Fusion has been rescheduled to November 2022, which is later than planned, and so this report outlines the approach to managing this project in order to secure a successful transfer. So as I mentioned, the system maintains HR records, driving the payroll, delivering payments to our suppliers, and maintaining our financial records to enable finances to be effectively monitored and the statutory accounts produced. The council was notified by a supplier that the existing system, which is Oracle EBSR 12, would cease to be supported from the 31st of December 2021. And a business case was approved at that time to implement the cloud-based successor, Oracle Fusion. Replacement was essential, but the new system also has a number of business benefits. So it increases the ability to undertake self-service, the digitalisation of processes, including reduction in manual forms and improved functionality, enabling improvements such as invoice scanning and better reporting capability. So things that could help us to become more effective over time. I think it's fair to say it was an ambitious timescale and budget, and implementation was planned for November 2021. An emergency power was published in April, providing an update and securing resources to the end of 2021-22. And the sort of go live, the implementation date was delayed to August 2021, primarily due to capacity challenges caused by COVID at the time. Since this time, the programme's experienced further challenges, which was things like accurate data migration and user acceptance testing, so checking out whether or not the systems were easily managed and whether users could cope with it. That's actually taken significantly longer than planned. It's also been clear that there was insufficient internal capacity to implement the new system, and it's been necessary to bring that resource in. I think that when we look at all the various grants and the finance stuff, etc., that we've been managing over time with a very, very lean team, that in hindsight, the capacity wasn't sufficient to do that. The team are now progressing through the first of a series of payroll parallel that runs so that we can check out the accuracy and the efficiency of implementation. And this will be key to providing assurance that a go live date of November can be achieved. We're all too aware of the cost overruns, but will only go live if all of the criteria are met, because when you think about the need for accuracy within financial and accounting systems, we can't take a risk with that, and we also can't take a risk with payments to our staff. So we have to make sure that that is fully working. So, you know, the criteria are designed to give us certainty that the system will function as expected. It has been a tricky period, and my thanks to the teams that have been working exceptionally hard on this, normally alongside some of the other work that they're doing. And as I said, you know, the processing of all these grants, all the cost of living grants, all that sort of thing, also often comes down to the Exchequer team. I certainly would like to pass on my thanks to them for the huge amount of work they've undertaken on this. So recommendations before us today are firstly that Cabinet is recommended to note the updates outlined in this report, including the benefits to be realised from upgrading to Oracle Fusion, as well as the revised go-live date of November 2022. Secondly, that Cabinet is recommended to approve the additional costs to be met from 1, the ICT fund, which would be 1.223 million, and 2, the policy budget, which is 0.46 million. Funding for the 0.675 million of the increase over the original forecast was addressed in the April 2022 Emergency Powers Report. 3, Cabinet is recommended to note the additional recurrent cost of 125,000, which would be built into 2023-24 budget. And 4, Cabinet is recommended to approve the appointment of Oracle to deliver the second line support for the Oracle Fusion system. Before I move, I've got 2 people that want to speak. So if I bring in Councillor Williams first.
Thank you, Lydia. I was going to say I'd second it. I thought you were going to move, but yeah, thank you for giving me the opportunity. I'll be honest that when I first saw this report, I was really concerned about the increase in the budget required, but you've explained the reasonings behind it, and it's easy for us to forget the impact of the last few years on staff and the way they've been diverted just to meet continuing our statutory obligations. So there was a concern initially when we didn't have the capacity, but they've all been redirected to other stuff, and you're rightly doing is giving thanks to the staff that have been involved. I've also seen the additional benefits that this particular software provides, because I was concerned that we'd just gone from the company that's delivering now, the software's out of date and they're just updating. I thought, well, that would be straightforward, but I've since seen the additional benefits that we get, and I've seen it in another organisation, and it really does provide staff in particular much more ability to deal with their own particular issues, particularly in the HR side, and also be able to do the digitisation of some of the processes will save time. So on that basis, I just wanted to be clear that this isn't something we've taken on lightly. We've, you know, with as many projects, you can sit there at the beginning and think, right, this is going to, the time scales, this is what it's going to cost. Nobody was aware of what was going to come in the meantime. So I'm content to support this report.
Thank you, Eddie. And Mark.
Yeah, thank you very much, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Williams, for your contribution as well. I'm also aware that actually cloud-based systems very much the way to go, because they're much more sustainable as well, and require less maintenance of hardware on the ground, and I think that's also an important consideration. And also, as you know, self-service is very much the way to go. We want to empower more of our employees to do certain tasks themselves, and obviously that will speed up a lot of the HR processes, which can be quite time-consuming and not necessarily you get great benefit out of it. But I think, you know, with a system like this, it'd be much more interactive, and it will encourage staff to actually participate and manage their employment better.
Thank you both. Well, I was a bit ahead of the game in terms of moving that. Oh, actually, I've just spotted that Ruba wanted to come in before I do that.
Thank you, Leader. Just really to reiterate what Councillor Williams, Eddie has just said, because I think people should be aware that, you know, the staff working on this had been redeployed in other areas, and, you know, this wasn't through negligence that, you know, aspects of this weren't, the contract weren't fulfilled on both sides. So it's very important that people are aware of that, that during the last couple of years, you know, what staff were actually doing and what they were achieving elsewhere. So I think that's I just really wanted to re-emphasize that, so that it is noted, and the system will allow people to, that the fact that it will allow staff to being much more in control of their own administration, if you like, has to be a good thing. Thank you.
Super. So because I've gone and turned it out of order, if I now move the 4 recommendations, Eddie, are you still seconding? You are, great. And are we all happy with those recommendations? Yeah. That. So we'll move on to agenda item 8. That's for the Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Sustainable Places. Over to you, Bronwyn.
Okay, thank you, Leader. Now this is the amended school and college transport policy. Just as a bit of background, the report has come about following a complaint that was made to the council regarding school transport from the Roos area to Cowbridge Comprehensive School. And in March 2022, several recommendations were made by the Public Services Ombudsman in relation to amending the school and college transport policy with the aim to make it clearer. In particular, the Ombudsman requested that the policy be updated to ensure consistency, clarity and accuracy of phrasing in relation to the purchase of bus passes, school catchment areas and transport entitlements. So taking those recommendations on board, the proposed revised school and college transport policy was therefore published on the Council's website from the 12th of July 2022 to the 12th of August 2022. And the link for that actually is in the summary there. Now, 16 responses were received to the consultation, with most of those responses requesting clarification of the policy as detailed in the report before you today. Now it's quite a comprehensive, but it is quite clear and easy to read this report. So I would welcome then any of us, and obviously any parents as well, I've got concerns to actually read through that policy as well. Now, in order for the revised policy to be enforced from the 1st of September 2023, I understand that is quite a way away, but we have to place it on the council's website by the 1st of October 2022, which is why the report is in front of us today, to make sure that we can reach that deadline. So I've got 3 recommendations. First, that Cabinet reviews and agrees the consultation responses and replies to each as contained in Appendix B to this report. That Cabinet approves the revised school and college transport policy as attached to Appendix A to this report. And then lastly, that the use of paragraph 15.14.2 of the Council's Constitution, which is the urgent decision procedure, is to be approved by Cabinet to allow the revised policy to be published on the Council website by the 1st of October 2022. And I move those recommendations.
Thank you, Bronwyn. I'm very happy to second those recommendations. Is everybody happy with that? Yeah.
Thank you very much.
No dissent there. Thank you very much. So agenda item 10, I will put to one side, and we will deal with that as the last item under part 1, and we'll move on to. Hang on. No, I'm going I've jumped to agenda item 9. I thought I was being very prepared and I wasn't. So there we are. So first, before we go on to any others, we'll go to agenda item 9, which is a report of the Cabinet Member for Education, Arts and the Welsh Language. Over to you, Rhiannon.
Thank you. This report is about the proposal to add St Richard Gwyn to our capital programme. St Richard Gwyn RC Roman Catholic High School has been identified as an urgent project due to the implications relating to the viability of the scheme due to the requirements of the new TAN 15 guidance, which is set to be adopted in June 2023. To deliver the project within the required timeframe, the scheme will be added to the Council's Band B capital programme. A variation to the Strategic Outline programme will be required to approve the change and will need to be submitted to Welsh Government by the 14th of October of this year. The project will increase the Council's contribution by 8.250 million. This will be funded through unallocated Section 106 monies, reserves and borrowing. 466,000 is required to be invested in the scheme before the variation to the Strategic Outline programme is determined, to ensure the design and planning works are addressed before the new TAN 15 guidance is adopted in June 2023. There is currently 106 monies available to fund the Richard Gwyn Roman Catholic High School scheme, which comes from the following schemes: Cog Road, Sully, the former St Sire's School, Merch Road, Dinas Powys, land adjacent to the Llantwit Major bypass. It's a denominational school and has a large catchment area, so the amount of 106 monies, Section 106 funds from the developments has been allocated based on the likely number of pupils attending St Richard Gwyn from the area each development is located. And there is a table in the notes if anybody wants to look at the specific details of this. So there are 4 recommendations. That the Cabinet notes the position relating to the Council's Sustainable Communities for Learning Band B programme. The Cabinet approves the amended Band B profile of the Council's Sustainable Communities for Learning programme and submission to Welsh Government. The Cabinet approves the inclusion of initial design and feasibility works in relation to the Faith School project and include a budget of 466,000 into the 2023 capital programme. And that the use of Article 15.4.2A2 of the Council's Constitution, Urgent Decision Procedure, be authorised in respect of recommendations 2 and 3. So if I could have your approval for those recommendations, please.
Thank you, Rhiannon. I have to say, I am just absolutely thrilled that you've brought this report forward to Cabinet. I'd be delighted to second it, although I think Bronwyn will probably fight me out of the way for that. This is the last of our secondary schools to be rebuilt, and I know that the children and families of St Richard Gwyn have been waiting patiently for this to come forward, and we have been working on it, and I'm also absolutely delighted that we are planning to move it from a MIM model to a capital funded model. But to be able to say, once this is built, that every single secondary school in the Vale of Glamorgan has been renewed or remodelled and substantially upgraded since 2010, I think is an absolutely phenomenal outcome. So thank you ever so much. Mark, you've got your hand up.
Thank you very much, Leader, and thank you very much, Councillor Birch, for bringing that report to our attention. I think it's fantastic news and it benefits everybody in the Vale of Glamorgan. And I think that is a crucial point to make here, because lots and lots of people from our communities, especially of Catholic faith, will have a very updated school now. The most updated school in the Vale of Glamorgan, in the sense, even though we've got fantastic new schools built in Barry and in the West of Vale. So really, I'm absolutely thrilled by this, and I'm looking forward to going to any, if I'm allowed to go, to any spades in the ground event that will happen, and obviously look forward to it being developed with great interest.
Good. Thank you, Mark. Is there anyone else that wants? I don't see any more hands up. So with that, I think
Okay, thank you.
we approve that. So as I said, we're moving agenda item 10 on a couple of items. So on that note, we're going on to agenda item 11, which is Cabinet Member for Social Care and Health with the annual report of the Director for Social Services. Over to you, Reggie.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. This is one of those reports that an annual report, and you think, okay, what's happening within the service? It's a final version, and you can see from the report itself, it's the director generates a challenge version, which he does a snapshot of, what areas need to be, the highlights of what needs to be done, and also improvement areas. It's quite a lengthy report, but what I would recommend is that anybody, members and partners, well, in fact, it will be sent on, but they actually look into it, because it's encouraging some of the things that we as an authority are involved with and providing for our residents. So this report was considered by Healthy Living and Social Care Scrutiny Committee in July, and the committee members provided positive feedback. A finalised version following the feedback from partners is being presented to the Cabinet today for approval, and the report contains a number of priorities which the Director of Social Services has determined. These have been set in the context of the pandemic and significant changes in demand, and Cabinet is asked to agree for these improvement priorities. If you look at the background to this report, it is a statutory duty that the Director produces the report, and it takes on much of the data that we've got, performance indicators, and it's written for a wide range of people, including service users and carers, but also elected members, council and staff, and a range of partners and providers who help us deliver our services. And interestingly, it's used by the Care Inspectorate of Wales as evidence and to guide their inspection programme in the Vale of Glamorgan. The report reflects on progress over the last financial year, and the corporate plan sets out our vision for the next 4 years by identifying the priorities that align to wellbeing outcomes and objectives. In planning how we deliver the service over the coming years, our annual service plans outline our service-specific contributions to their priorities. The key considerations that you can see is that we involve both statutory and other sectors as part of our delivery, and it's in that current context that we've been delivering. And as you're aware, we've had COVID, and that's affected much of what we deliver. If you look at Appendix A, it gives a SWAY report, and this was what was sent around, circulated to scrutiny members and partners, and so from those observations and comments, we know that this report accurately reflects the position of the social services. Let's see. The challenged version was also amended following the considering the scrutiny committee and the feedback from partners and stakeholders, and the scrutiny committee have asked for some further explanation of the role of some of the teams mentioned, and that just gives an indication of the breadth of services that the social services are actually involved with. There's a couple of highlights that I just want to pick on within the report, and it's let me just pull the report up. Okay, the particular highlight is when you look at within the report, it talks about reablement packages completed during the year, and 73.3% were met, and we've got children looked after. And interestingly, this was a concern of mine, and it's of many, is the children looked after placed outside of Wales, but the figure is quite low. It's 2.8%, and it's still an area which we would like to address within the authority. One of the other highlights is that 95.5% of young people were allocated a personal advisor, and this is something which is a really good response. And also, when you look at the amount of service users, we've got 609 service users were offered the assessment undertaken in Welsh. So there's another aspect that just shows that we're meeting some of our wider strategic goals. As with any analysis or report, you've actually got to see what you can improve on. So there's a couple that we're focusing on. We've got, when you look at the number of assessments completed for children within statutory timescales, that was 52.1%. So really want to improve on that. And also child protection reviews completed in timescales was 75%. or 75.1%, and so that really needs improvement as well. And lastly, main focus, looked after children reviews, including pathway plan reviews and pre-adoption reviews, completing timescales was 73.6%. Now they're the headlines ones. If you go through the report, you'll see underneath each of the objectives, under the wellbeing objectives, there are other specifics that go into detail, and also the report talks about what was actually achieved with through the authority and partners, particularly over the COVID period, and some examples, community testing program that we were involved with during the COVID, and support to social care. We're talking about residential and nursing homes and domiciliary care providers. There's lots of good stuff within this report, so I do recommend that to go through. Okay, so let me see. Let's get back to the recommendations of the report. Here you go. The Cabinet considers the contents of this report, and number 2, that Cabinet approves the Director's Annual Report for 21-22 as attached at Appendix A, and that Cabinet agrees the improvement priorities of social services are set out in the Director's Annual Report for 21-22. I so move.
Thank you, Eddie. I think that Councillor John Gwynn wanted to come back.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. This is an honest, hard-working report, basically. This is a department, like all our departments, under tremendous stress. And I can't think of a better officer than Lance Carver, who's really working so hard to meet the demands. It's a very, very difficult situation these days, as we saw in the national news last night, about the shortage of carers, not only in the Vale of Glamorgan, but across Wales generally. And this something as I've had first-hand knowledge of in the past, and quite honestly, it's a very, very stressful state of affairs when you've got over 120 people waiting for care, but you're doing your very best to provide that care, and it's not easy with the demands. So I applaud Lance for what he does. He works very hard in this department and all his staff with him, but the pressure is enormous, and I support the report today, and I second Eddie's report. Thank you.
Super. So as Gwyn's seconded that, Ruba, you wanted to come in.
Thank you, Chair. Really, just to say that again, this is an area of our work and our services which is under a huge amount of pressure, and actually a pressure which isn't necessarily always spoken about or publicised in any way. So actually, let's take the good news stories from here, but also people need to note that that there are difficulties, and these difficulties aren't going to go away because there are huge issues around recruitment, around resources, and we should be monitoring this going forward, which obviously we will, but also the people of the Vale of Glamorgan really need to take a look at this report. So thank you, and I would recommend it also.
Yeah.
Super. So with support of 2 out of Cabinet plus a movement from Eddie, and am I taking it that everybody else is in support of this? Yes, lots of thumbs up, so that's good. Thank you, Eddie. And then we are actually moving on to Ruba's reports. Cabinet Member for Community Engagement, Equalities and Regulatory Services, agenda item 12, which is the Vale Glamorgan Local Development Plan. Over to you, Ruba.
Sorry, Chair. Yes, so I hope you're all going to support this now. So as you all know, we're consulting on, we will be consulting going forward on the new replacement local development plan. So that's currently being prepared, and therefore the existing suite of supplementary planning guidance that we have, and I counted them, and they're about 20 odd, so they're about, I think, 2022, will need to be updated to to obviously reflect, relevant policies in the new plan going forward. So there is a need to prepare new draft SPGs, and you'll see that the two that are covered in this report attached to this report. And I would obviously recommend that you have a look through those. A previous annual monitoring report on the LDP did recommend that this SPG be reviewed and a new guidance be written. But obviously this was during COVID, and so officers, those kind of corporate matters weren't a priority at the time. So I'm bringing this supplementary planning guidance to Cabinet today. The first one is looking at retail, and as I say, it's taking in the relevant national policy and legislative changes as well, such as Future Wales, National Plan for 2040, obviously the Wellbeing and Future Generations Act, also Building Better Places, which is from 2020, and the Planning Policy Wales Edition 11 from February 2021. In terms of the retail and town centre development SPG, the adopted LDP contains several retail policies which provide a framework for managing retail uses and a proposed retail development within our authority. So the retail and town centre development SPG reflects the most up-to-date planning policy and guidance and adopts a more flexible approach to new uses within town centres. So this idea of a more flexible approach, sort of a multi-use purpose within our town centres, the need for more mixed uses within the high street is important, and is something which has really come to the fore in our recovery from the pandemic. So the other thing to note on the retail SPG is that once it's adopted, it replaces the Upper Holton Road SPG. And then the other SPG here is the Economic Development and Employment Land and Premises SPG. Now, again, the LDP has lots of employment-related policies which provide a framework to ensure mainly that there's an adequate supply and choice of suitable employment land available to support the relevant our relevant LDP objectives and to meet obviously a local employment need. And again, this is the draft SPG is appended to this report. So I'm asking Cabinet today to agree the recommendations in this report, which I'll just read through now. So the first is that Cabinet approves the new draft SPG as attached, with delegated powers for the Director of Place in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Community Engagement, Equalities and Regulatory Services to make any typographical or minor changes as necessary prior to publication for public consultation purposes. Secondly, that all members, including planning committee members, be invited to attend a member briefing session to advise them of the forthcoming consultation and content of the draft SPGs. And thirdly, that a further report is presented to Cabinet following the public consultation to report the findings of the public consultation exercise and consider any changes to the draft SPGs prior to their formal adoption for development management purposes. And finally, that the existing, which I have mentioned already, that the existing Upper Holton Road SPGs withdrawn and replaced by the new retail and town centre development SPG when adopted. It's a bit of a mouthful, but I'm asking you to agree with those recommendations, Cabinet.
We have two Cabinet members that are keen to comment on this, Ruba. So first of all, we'll go to Councillor John. Over to you, Gwyn.
Thank you, Leader. I read this report in detail, and quite honestly, it's very good. It's very good report, and it's a good read. I'll be honest with you, I thoroughly enjoyed reading, and quite honestly, the facts there, I congratulate the officers for what they put together. I thoroughly support this recommendation.
Thanks, Gwyn. And Mark, over to you.
Thank you very much, Leader, and thank you very much, Councillor Ruber, as well, in terms of presenting this report. I think it's a really interesting report. But what's also interesting is that is out to consultation, and I think that is so crucial with something like this, because this will determine the future in terms of plan applications as well, because this is the framework in which they got within. And I really like this way of with updating things, with consulting with the public, and obviously I think it's important we do take their views on, and that we widely publicise this, because I think that is crucial. And I would like to say that it's essential reading for all councillors, and also town and community councillors as well, or anyone who's interested in the planning process.
I mean, I would say, Chair, just to thank you both for the comments. You know, the fact is, this is we're moving forward with this, so we have to be flexible. We have to be, you know, we have to adapt to how things are changing. So, for example, you know, more people are working from home. That will affect both the employment, you know, how we look at our employment land, but also how we look at our high streets and the, you know, the purposes of the, you know, the retail businesses. So it's really important that we are reflecting those changes, and I think this, you know, this report, but with the two SPGs are aiming to do that, and do that. So I would urge, as you say, people should you know, give their views on it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ruba. And yes, it is an interesting one, and reflects the changing nature of our town centres very much so, which is good, because it's, you know, so many times we're hamstrung in what we can do because of the sort of policy framework within which we operate. And this is the way in which, you know, I keep banging on about, well, you know, the first thing you have to do if you want to make changes is change the policies which provide the framework within which we operate. And this is exactly what you're trying to do. So excellent. So did anyone actually second that? Or I didn't think anyone seconded it. Gwyn, oh well, Gwyn, you seconded it. Mark, you seconded it. That's okay. So are we all totally happy with this report? Super. Thanks everyone. So now we're going to go back to agenda item 10, and it's at this point we're going.
Mr.
Pardon?
Agenda item 13, Chair.
Number 13, Chair.
It's another report from me, Chair.
Do you know, I'm not going to change the order of items anymore because it completely throws me, and I have got it here. Thank you for getting me on the straight and narrow. Yes, Rupert, your second report, and that's to do with statues, monuments, street names and building names. So back to you. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I'm just bringing up. This report is coming to Cabinet. You'll recall, by way of a bit of background, that in November 2020, Cabinet approved proposals to establish a review of statues, monuments, street names and building names to be taken from both a historic perspective, to see if there are any causes of concern, but also inviting consideration for future recognition of individuals' events and to celebrate diversity. Now, members of the Cabinet will remember this came on following the Black Lives Matter movement and the protests, so that, you know, and Welsh Government then encouraged local authorities to look at these specific issues around statues, monuments and street names. So a panel was brought together and met for an introductory meeting in March 2021 to discuss the background to the review and the framing of a public call for representations for discussion. And then this was then expanded at further meetings, as well as discussing to include discussing of culture, Welsh language, and the Communications Committee's report, Set in Stone, a report on who gets remembered in public spaces, which is a really interesting report. And I know we've encouraged people to read reports today, but that is really an interesting report to read. But it was to develop a forward work programme and look at examples of work carried out by other South East Wales local authorities. In March 21, the March 2021 report to Cabinet also sought approval to undertake a review to engage the Vale of Glamorgan Town and Community Councils and its communities in this important area. And I have to say, Chair, that Penarth Town Council really gave some positive feedback, and that they gave some very interesting responses to that. So I would thank Penarth Town Council for that. This is important work within the context of the new administration's overall key objective to increase visibility and participation. And it's obviously a key and important element of my cabinet portfolio. And that's why I'm keen to chair the panel under the proposed recommendations of this report. This comes alongside strides that are being made to improve equality across the Vale of Glamorgan. This includes the Windrush commemoration that we recently had, the development of the council's diverse network for colleagues from Black and minority ethnic backgrounds, and is in the spirit of our new participation strategy. And in terms of the work of the review itself, I would envisage that additional expertise on a range of subjects, including historical and cultural, which will also include the Welsh language, could be brought in to advise this panel. And this project shouldn't be seen in negative terms. It's not just about changing names or pulling down statues. It's rather a conversation about us as a council in our communities, talking about how we want to commemorate those from our ethnic communities who have contributed to our society. And it's important that we as a council reflect our diversity and recognise publicly, whether through art, street names or statues, people who come from ethnic communities and who have contributed. So you'll see in the report there is a recommendation that the panel is changed slightly to reflect the new administration following our election in May this year. May this year? Yes, May this year. So if I move to the recommendations, Chair, the first one is it's recommended that Cabinet approves the changes proposed to the review panel membership and the previous terms of reference following the local government elections which took place on the 5th of May. And that's described in the report in Appendix A. Secondly, it's recommended that subject to recommendation 1, Democratic Services contact the leaders of the council's political groups to request 1 nomination each to join the review panel. Thirdly, it's recommended that Cabinet notes the work completed to date by the review panel. And lastly, it's recommended that the Cabinet considers and authorises a new call to town and community councils and members of the public to submit matters for consideration by the panel prior to any recommendations being made to Cabinet. So I so move, Chair.
Thank you. Yes, I think it would be interesting to reflect some of the changes that have happened, and I'm glad that that you're prepared to be chair of the committee, I think that that will help it to move forward. So thank you for that. I'm delighted to second that. And Rhiannon, you wanted to come in?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, thank you for your kind words about Penarth Town Council. I mean, we were very interested in the whole process of the looking at you know, place names in particular in Penarth. We're a bit short on statues, but of course lots of ours are to do with you know, the landed gentry, aristocracy, historical battles, etc. And so we felt that educating people further on why these names arrived and were placed where they were would be very interesting. So we were very keen on the idea of information plaques, you know, things like Plassey, which means nothing to anybody that hasn't done any kind of 19th century history and so forth, or all of the places that are named after the Earl of Plymouth and his various estates and so forth, which I think add to the real enrichment. You know, I think that I've talked to people who teach primary within Penarth, and it would be something they're very interested in. You know, this kind of idea of being able to place your parts of your town in context of when it was built, how it was developed, how it changed, and so forth. So I welcome the review, and I would be had Liz not beaten me to it, I would wish to second it.
I thought you might. That's why I nipped in quickly. but no, I think it's really good, and I think that, you know, to have a diversity of commemoration within our communities to help people understand. You know, there's nothing better than to understand the place that you're from, and that's exactly why we've been doing the place work in Barry since 2016, and how we hope in the fullness of time to take that across the whole Vale. And I think that this work will very much contribute to that. So thank you for that, Ruba. And I think from everybody nodding that we are all in agreement. Yeah, super. And this time I'll try and be in order. So we are going to now lose Rhiannon and Mark. And so you're going to disconnect yourself, and Matt will tell us when you've left the meeting.
Thank you, Chair. They're both disconnected now.
Excellent. So we have, first of all, we have agenda item 10 that we're coming back to, and that's a report in relation to the purchase of land at Lower Cosmeston Farm for educational development for a special educational needs school. In some ways, this is pretty straightforward in that back in July 2020, there was the strategy to transform special education in the Vale to meet projected future demand and best meet I can't speak today, meet the needs of our most vulnerable learners was agreed, and that included increasing capacity at Ysgol-y-Derry, the council's special educational needs school, to meet projected demand for special education. And I think that it's worth noting that the project would deliver 150 places to meet that additional demand. I don't know if Cabinet's noticed that the much praised documentary on Ysgol-y-Derry is currently back being shown on BBC television, and it's very worth watching. But it goes without saying that the school is over capacity, and that there are children currently in temporary buildings. They are good quality temporary buildings, but they are in temporary buildings, and we need to expand that provision. This is a part one report, and we will discuss some of the more sort of financial and commercially confidential aspects under the part two report. But in essence, this project cost for the scheme was originally laid out as 12.1 million, and that's now increased to 21.9 million. And a business case for that has been submitted to Welsh Government to request additional grant funding for the increased cost of the project. It's worth noting that those costs aren't related to the land purchase. It's to do with the cost increases within the sector, the modern requirements for drainage and things like access, etc., to the site. It's with inflation, with all the other constraints that we're currently finding, every time we do a capital budget review, we are finding that costs are going up exponentially. So that's the one on that. Just making sure that I haven't missed anything on there. No, I mean, the report itself goes into the need for it and how the choice of site was arrived at, etc. And that is, in effect, what we've gone through in every other report that we've done on this site. So I think that so that we can have more in-depth conversation, that the recommendation is that Cabinet notes this report and recommendations considered in connection and considers the recommendations in connection with the Part 2 report later in the agenda. So if we note this, and we can move on to the next agenda item. So do I have a seconder?
Second that, Leader.
Super. Is everyone happy with that? Excellent. So that is approved. I don't have any urgent items under agenda item 14. So in order to discuss, I do have the agenda item 15, which is a part 2